Hey everybody, it's Dan.
And this is Ron.
And this is Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hey Elizabeth.
Hi.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
Here I am. It's good to be back in the neighborhood.
And by here and neighborhood, Elizabeth is talking about over on the other side of the river from me, because we're still in self-isolation, or what's the right word?
Quarantine.
Well, quarantine is really when you're putting yourself in that 14-day period in which you're like barely near anyone, right?
I feel like
still
yes and no. I feel like that definitely applies to that, but I think it also, I don't know, I've kind of thought of it as a general word for this new lifestyle we're leading. But I guess physical distancing period is probably the more accurate term.
It's like one of the first times in human history that like the economic and psychological symptoms of depression just like had a party together. Like everybody, right? Everybody's like kind of sleeping in a little bit. They're not going out of the house.
I don't even know what time of day it is. Like,
yeah.
My body clock has completely gone haywire.
This is totally like some of the symptoms I'm experiencing are things that I experience like at the depths of a depressive episode. There are things that are like, wait, this isn't me. This is depression. And then this other thing, this isn't me. This is depression. And finally, like, wow, there's all these different things. Am I depressed? Like, I don't feel depressed.
It's not depression. It's coronavirus.
Yeah,
because we're all in it together.
We're all in it together.
Right? We're normalizing it. We're
Totally.
kind of, it's like, it can't be non-normative behavior if we all just do it at once.
It can't be right.
People are getting one half of the experience, or maybe a quarter of the experience of what it's like to be depressed.
Yeah, everybody's okay. I get everybody's experienced a depressive episode. All right, so
I can usually tell like yeah, like I can usually tell my mental health by like how high can I score at Pac-Man.
Is that an inverse relationship?
We'll see. I'm getting really. I got the championship edition version on the DS, and I've been been doing pretty good. So we'll see.
I think a more cheerful way to refer to our current location is like virtual Anomaly neighborhood.
The virtual Anomaly neighborhood. Whoa.
Yeah, that's where we are right now. We're on the Anomaly block in virtual reality.
It's like Sesame Street for people with like we're still kind of talking to our hand. Well, no, nobody talks to their hands on Sesame Street. I'm thinking other. It's more like Howdy Doody. Howdy Doody didn't really have a street. Never mind. That was a dead end.
So,
anyway.
We watched a movie. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was not important.
Oh, okay. That we watched a movie?
Oh, that too. No. Actually, it was important. It was a journey.
It was.
It was like, yeah.
So anybody want to say what movie we watched?
I think you should, Ron, because this is near and dear to your heart.
All right. We watched a movie. We watched a movie this afternoon called Xanadu, the 1980 classic with Olivia Newton-John and Gene Kelly.
And some no-name guy with blonde hair.
Yeah, was he in anything else?
I've never seen that guy before. Like, he looks perfect for it, and he has like that exact kind of bad acting that can define a generation or an era. But like, fuck if I know who he is. Yeah,
and he's at the center of like generic Disney prince vibes.
Which we get at one point.
Right.
We actually get a Disney, or as Dan pointed out, Don Bluth sequence. So there he is, probably a Disney prince.
Yeah, and that was another kind of, because I feel like Disney, they kept that house style. I mean, they had that house style for a long time. They didn't really update it until the 60s, I feel like. So that kind of could work. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I feel like this was a very different movie than I thought it was.
How so?
So I never saw this before tonight. I've known that it existed for a very long time. Didn't really know a ton about it. And it was so weird because like all of the things that seem to kind of define overview accounts of what the 80s were culturally, they're like there, and they're like incredibly literal. The whole like pastiche replacing modernism thing is just like overt, and they're just like referencing it over and over and over again. And the whole idea of like, oh, we're pulling on the grandeur of the past and the idea that it's fleeting to say that we're going to live forever thing. Like it's like a very triumphant movie about dying.
Wow. You totally just like missed the vibe of the movie.
Yeah, I think Dan has like a remarkable knack for seeing like the darkest possible interpretation and even like the dumbest, most cheerful things.
Right. So that Dan, that's not to say that I necessarily disagree with your analysis, but it totally kills the vibe of the movie.
Yeah, like if we're gonna, okay, maybe we should like describe what this movie is about and the overall tone because like right now we've got a bunch of listeners who think that this is a movie about accepting death or something.
Well, no, so you have an old man thinking about the past to the point where he accumulates his junk in the exact pattern that Orson Welles accumulated all the random like statues and crap at the end of Citizen Kane in Xanadu, hence the title, right before Kane dies, and he says that thing that I said in every other episode, go back and look for it. And and then he meets what seems to be a projection of his own past in this woman who can never actually be reached, like a postmodern signified. And then he just sort of looks back at the past, but he never has to actually, there's no danger, there's no conflict. And he makes repeated remarks about like, they say the past can never come back. Well, I'll show those fuckers. And he starts dancing basically, right? Like,
God.
Okay, so now with that prelude, Elizabeth, can you tell us what the movie is? Because when we did the episode last week and we started watching the movie, we stopped 2 minutes into it with Dan saying, "This is the most Liz movie I've ever seen." So there was no way that we were going to be watching that without.
Oh yeah, no. Like aesthetically, this is I feel like we have the lady here herself. She should.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay.
I mean, I can explain a little bit of what I was saying, but I feel like it would.
No, we can get back to it. But
yeah, starting with the meat, but we need to start with the appetizers.
Yeah.
So
let's get a sense for what the movie was.
Right. So this is a movie that's set very much like right off the bat. It's like bam, 1980s. You've got the fashion, you've got the neon, but basically it opens up with a young, handsome man who is an artist, and he's doing a series of studies and paintings, and you see him repeatedly throwing his artwork out. He's just throwing it away, like crumpling it up, because he's just really frustrated with what he's working on.
The only thing he's happy with is his hair.
The only thing and his like very tight jeans. No. And we see him at one point throw this one drawing of a woman out. He just rips it up, throws the crumpled pieces of paper out of a window, and they blow across the city of Los Angeles. And then they like somehow knock against this mural of like 9 dancing women, and they all like come to life with like these weird glowing neon outlines, and they start like dancing, and there's like music happening, and you're just sitting there like, what's going on? And then it cuts to a scene where we see the same artist like coming back to his old job where he like did all sorts of like commissioned like artwork, like basically like replicating various like album covers and posters and stuff like that, like stuff that he doesn't care about, but it's like the only way that he can make money. But now I'm trying to remember if like
he has no artistic ambition, but he has to be frustrated, or else you just think he's a corporate hack, even though the thing that the muse is telling him to do is create commercial packaging to sell things, which is so 80s, it like hurts.
Yeah, there's like some
and you've got to package it in like neon that, as I said many times, made me hungry because it just looked like shiny butter, and then like everything
said
was
no
like
one ever except you.
The outline of corn, and then they put it on a grill. I'm sorry. Anyway, back to Elizabeth.
Okay, well, anyway, so on the way into his old crappy job, he like for some reason, because it's the movies and like we have a weird sexist culture, this like woman comes up behind him and grabs him, and then
without
turns
consent.
around.
Dan, what did you
and
think of that? Sorry.
she,
That was the weird
turns around and she just randomly kisses him, a complete stranger, and we have no idea why. And then like she just disappears, and he's like, "What just happened?" And then later on, like when he's at his job, he like gets a new commission where he's supposed to paint a giant version of this album cover, and on the album cover is the same exact woman that he ran into, who kissed him. So he starts to get a little bit like, "Whoa, like it's a sign." And then he eventually I think at some point after that, we see some ridiculous sequence where he's like riding roller skates while like holding onto the back of a truck, which also felt very 80s.
That was so 80s.
And then we at some point, he a little bit later on that day or something, he like meets this talented clarinetist, like older man on the beach, who is Gene Kelly, and woo, and they kind of become friends and they start talking, and Gene Kelly's like, "Why are you bummed out?" And he's like, "I saw this woman." And so their lives become kind of intertwined, and I guess Gene Kelly talks a little bit.
Gene Kelly just basically decides like he's like, "Hey, young man that met me at on like a random hill on a beach somewhere, I'm gonna be your dad." And he's like, "Yo, that's cool."
/ older boyfriend.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Gene Kelly is making like he just like he puts his arm back. If Olivia Newton-John had been there, it would have looked like he was trying to make like Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin, "I'm drunk and I want to sleep with you" vibes, but he's just looking at this guy and it's like, "Oh yeah, that girl, you got to chase that girl, buddy."
Yeah.
Like
his best come hither pose.
well, actually, no, he doesn't even like. He seems like uncomfortable when what's his face talks about girls. Like I get this sense that Olivia Newton-John and Gene Kelly are both like jealous over the nobody that we can't remember his name.
Oh, Sonny,
Sonny, right?
The main guy.
The artist named Sonny. There's definitely like undertones there. I don't really know how important it is though, because it really has nothing to do with like whatever the plot in the movie is. But
there is no plot. It's all just like
there's kind
loose
of
iconography floating around.
Did we mention that
basically one of the things that comes to light when Sonny meets this older man on the beach is like, you know, he like gave up his music dreams years ago because he was like tortured by losing this woman that he really loved, and he never came back to it, and he ended up spending most of his career doing something he didn't care about. So it's kind of like, you know, a little foil, like, "Sonny, you should do something you feel passionate about and like follow your dreams." And then
apparently he has a lot of dreams about Olivia Newton-John covered in shiny butter.
Did we mention that this is a musical?
Oh
yeah, right. There's lots of like fun, peppy 80s music.
Yeah.
And then I think after that is the part where he like runs into Olivia Newton-John's character, whose name is Kira, and they he runs into her at the building that's in the album cover
Which is a dilapidated old it's a dilapidated old center, like a auditorium. It actually says auditorium on the.
Yeah, it's some kind of famous location, because I swear to God I've seen that thing, and so like when I saw it when it was broken down, I could have sworn it was the outside that they used for the planetarium exterior in Rebel Without a Cause, but I don't think that's what it is now. But like it's some kind of, it's like a famous theater in Los Angeles or something.
Oh,
I think
so Xanadu is
that would be an errata
thing.
I'm
getting ahead of myself.
Well, Xanadu, I mean, that's what's so weird though, because Xanadu in Citizen Kane is just the sign that like his bid for immortality through accumulating crap is pointless, and all he wants is a return to childhood. And then this movie, it's just sort of like, get all the crap and you can return to childhood, and it's going to be fucking awesome. You know, that you keep getting older, but the girls all stay the same age, right? Like Matthew McConaughey in Dazed and Confused.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's like an 80s movie looking back on the 40s, which is so funny because I feel like nowadays we're like now looking back on the 80s kind of, or just any time other than now, honestly.
Well, it's like claiming it as empire, right? Like whenever somebody wants to, when like a political regime wants to declare itself the new empire, it always tries to create some kind of monument to something that looks Roman or Greek.
Oh yeah, like the Iranian Shah.
The Iranian Shah, like Hitler's proposed renovations of Berlin before it got bombed out and the war ended.
Right.
But
Well,
I guess Albert Speer drew out the drawings. But
it's kind of similar to like what Trump was trying to do, is sort of make America great again. Like this sort of looking backwards and reclaiming like a culture that at that point is just kind of totally fictionalized.
And the chronology is really like funky there. Well, were you done?
Well, no, I mean, no, that was just kind of it. Like, you know, you're kind of trying to like reclaim a culture that's like at that point in the future, like totally fictionalized and mythological within the present day culture.
And like the key dates are so telling, I think, because like the 70s, you have a lot of economic problems. The Bretton Woods system collapses. Everybody goes off the gold standard, and you start having like median wages begin to stagnate and never really recover after about 1973. And so it's also kind of the generally accepted beginning of like neoliberalism as a historical period. And the past that they're going back to in the film is like Gene Kelly literally says that basically the 80s start in 1980, the 40s end or the 40s begin in 1945. Like the war doesn't exist, only the post-war boom exists.
Right, the soldiers coming back home, which is even like in one of the dance scenes, there's like the soldiers, like, but we're also, I feel like we have to explain the rest of the movie.
Oh yeah.
Ron, why don't you explain the rest of it?
So Sonny finds this auditorium, and eventually, blah blah blah. It turns out that Danny, the Gene Kelly character, is a very wealthy developer, and he's looking for a project. And he says, "Sonny, help me out." And he says, "I got this place." And they go there, and a big wide open place that Danny says they used to host wrestling there. So Danny's imagining this band. It's 1945, and I don't know, boogie woogie singers. Not boogie woogie. I'm thinking of the boogie woogie.
They're supposed to look like the Andrews Sisters.
Yeah. Okay.
Boogie Boogie Boy was their big hit. Yeah.
And then Sonny is imagining a rock band that people are dancing to.
Slash having an orgy.
What was that?
Slash having an orgy.
Right.
Right. And the rock sequences in this are so bizarre, but we'll get to that later. So.
Yeah. Oh, well. Oh, okay. All right. So now meanwhile, Sonny and Kira are falling in love, and we get a scene in which they start to kiss, and then it suddenly becomes animated, and it's a Disney animation of a couple. So she kind of looks like Tinkerbell, but human sized.
Right.
Oh yeah, the like peep woman.
Yeah.
And then it went like a Little Mermaid or something, although I don't know when that came out.
Yeah. Oh no, not till later.
Oh, never mind. Oh dang! Wow.
Yeah, Little Mermaid probably took some stuff from this, because like Little Mermaid had a lot of like 70s and 80s queer culture stuff in it, like the what's her face, like the villain.
Oh,
Ursula, yeah, she's literally drawn out to look like Divine from the first couple John Waters movies, Pink Flamingos, Mondo Trasho, etc. Right?
Yeah.
There's other stuff I'm blanking on, but that would be an interesting one to watch at some point.
What? Wait, I just got a recommendation for something John Waters related, and I can't remember what it is. Nah, I'm looking. Something like, This Filthy World. It's a talk that he gave, or some interview. Also, there's a documentary about Divine.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Good. What was that?
That would be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be cool to watch. But let's see. So then, so they turn into their Disney generic Disney prince and human-sized Tinkerbell. Then they're both fish. Then they're both birds, and then they're back to generic prince and human Tinkerbell.
They get sucked into a rose.
Oh yeah. Well, and then eventually we get to Xanadu's. No, okay, I jumped too far. It is now the night before opening night for Xanadu, and Kira leaves. she says Sonny has fallen in love with her. She's fallen in love with him, but that's not allowed. She tells him that she's a muse. She pops in every so often. She inspires people, and then she leaves. She can't just hang out permanently. But Sonny says no. What was that?
She is not of this world.
She's not of this world. He goes searching. Danny tells him, "You go find her." And so he goes and he's roller skating around. He finds a mural with the 9 muses. He identifies her. That ends up taking him to, I don't know, some kind of weird Tron-like heaven or Mount Olympus.
Lightsaber heaven.
A lot of neon.
Yeah. And so he's going to do
Things got neon like a Ken Russell movie's got dicks.
Say that again?
This
Yeah, totally. So he says, Kira, you're coming back with me, and Zeus, whatever, says, no, she's not going back with you. And she says, does anybody care what I say? But the answer is no.
These people can't even tell the difference between minutes or centuries because they're gods.
Yeah. What do they know?
They're like, is it a moment or is it forever? I don't know.
Less talk, more eat, tasty corn woman.
But then so Sonny's kicked out, and then Hera says, oh, come on, just one night. And he's like, yeah, okay. And the next thing we see is Xanadu is opening up. It's opening night, and there's the 6-minute dance sequence that's what we've been waiting for the whole time. The reason we sit through this movie is the 6-minute dance sequence, and back to Elizabeth and Dan to describe it.
Oh man, I don't even know if I can do it justice. Basically, they all come out on roller skates and are doing these crazy circles around the dance floor. Ridiculous. And
it paused for a moment. So back when you said something about the dance floor, but I guess we'll never know.
Okay.
Well,
I moved it closer to the router.
I said basically it opens with a sequence of all these people roller skating absurdly around the dance floor, and then there's this crazy split screen of Gene Kelly just looking ridiculous, and then it goes into this just fast moving series of dance sequences, all differently themed, in which Kira is the star because she's suddenly back, and it's just awesome. It kind of just blends the 80s and then the previous 4 decades of dance into.
Well, but there's nothing from the 60s or 70s.
That's true.
It stops at about 1955.
Okay, so I lied. So it's basically
it's the psychedelic era didn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's some of the 70s. There's 76 to 79 era fashion and the rock and roll stuff, but there's the 60s basically don't exist.
There was some Beach Boys inspired or sounding stuff in there for a couple of minutes.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that. But yeah, there's so many different bits.
Yeah, I guess you can't have Electric Light Orchestra without some Beatles.
Right.
In there, yeah.
Well, Beach Boys, yeah. But yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, and then Kira goes back to Mount Olympus, or no, she's not Mount Olympus. I forget the mountain that the Muses are on. But she she gets sent back there, and then Sonny's kind of sad, and he goes and sits down next to Gene Kelly, and Gene Kelly says, yeah, here, why don't you have a drink? Here, this woman here will serve you. And Gene Kelly leaves, and the woman that comes over to serve Sonny is Kira.
Right.
Or at least some manifestation of her, or somebody that is supposed to be her spirit.
Well, she's like a ghost, right? It's like this very insular movie about, because we're not even really sure whether whenever we see Gene Kelly, Olivia Newton-John, and Sonny together, they're always positioned in the blocking in a way that suggests that basically the younger guy is pretty much just Gene Kelly imagining his own youth. And then she's just sort of the other side of him imagining his youth from the perspective of being an old man, and in the case of Gene Kelly himself making his final film, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Kelly's last film.
Yeah, and it just sort of I guess the lack of other people and the fact that the only woman in the narrative is essentially a spirit or a ghost.
Yeah.
In a weird way, it kind of reminded me of Solaris, the Tarkovsky movie, that way.
Yeah.
Where the guy's just kind of getting chased around by like the specter of his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, I think.
Ex-wife.
Ultimate
girlfriends don't get ghost movies, I guess, but
the ultimate unattainable woman, right?
The woman is hilarious.
Not only is she too good to be true and like more gorgeous than anything, but she like doesn't actually exist.
In Solaris or in Xanadu?
Well, I'm just I guess as a trope, but like.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In this version of The Great Gatsby, Gatsby throws a giant party. Daisy shows up, realizes she's madly in love with him, and they fucking immediately have kids. Like, this is that vision of America.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Now that we've completed the movie, and I think we got sort of the fun, not disco, early like late disco, early '80s vibe to this. Okay. Now, Dan, we can get back to the deep dark underbelly that the film has.
I think I said most of it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right? Like you just have this weird.
We can go back and like munch on some things.
Like, this kind of contradictory statement of acknowledging previous crumbled empires as a way of acknowledging one's own immortality, the ahistorical nature of a specific time period because of its political grandeur. And that's why I also kind of said during it seems like one of those processions before the Olympics where it's always about like the national history, and you see like a lot of random snippets of the country's history as a way of saying that there's like a unified national character that transcends time.
You know what the best part of all that is? Oh, I was just gonna say the best part of all that is that you got all of that out of Olivia Newton-John.
Right. I was just gonna say that's her.
Right. She's
sorry.
It's a movie because it's weird because there is like it's looking back at a very American view of the past, but it's acting as if the country that it's declaring the grandeur of is the 1980s itself.
But that's the 1980s saying it about itself.
Yeah, but like the guy like literally at one point says this is the 80s.
Right.
He's like a starter gun going off or something.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to see a movie from the 80s viewing itself as like people do now, like as people view the 80s now. Like it was like almost like a self-aware, like for being remarkably not self-aware, it was also a very self-aware movie. Like, I don't know.
Would you care to explain that?
I guess I just like they couldn't have done that and not thought on some level it was like totally ridiculous and like an absurd like hyper real vision of like what the 80s were. Like, you know what I mean? Or am I just...
It's like self-aware, but it doesn't reflect on itself. It's like self-aware in this very shallow way.
It's like almost as if self-awareness were just like only constituted like some kind of aesthetic awareness instead of like looking past that, because aesthetic is just like surface, right?
I mean, to go back to the classics, it's sort of like if Narcissus looked in the pond and realized he could actually fuck himself.
Wait, oh my god, that's like that's literally this movie. But also, speaking of aesthetic, this is completely like this is unrelated, but I did want to make the point that like some of the fashion and makeup and hair in this film were absolutely spectacular and reminded me of that other art film, the like David Bowie inspired, the one about like, was it cocaine or heroin? The aliens coming down.
Oh, Liquid Sky, another
Liquid
1980
Sky.
movie on a much lower budget.
Yeah.
Which is sort of that's like the new wave half of this, because the neon that defined kind of the corporate look of the 80s started out in like the punk club scene.
Right. So it was almost like literally like punk meets like commercialism.
Okay.
Xanadu is like the fusion of it. It's like the meeting point between those two things.
Right. It's saying like, why rebel against capitalism or it's sort of like why revolt when you can just buy buy the records.
But I also like don't want to say too much that sounds like hateful, because I like love Gene Kelly and I love like the nostalgia, the nostalgic vibe, and like all of the. I mean, my favorite dance sequence actually in the movie is like the one at the end is amazing, but my favorite one is the one where Gene Kelly is dancing with Olivia Newton-John, because it's just so 40s, and like there's just nothing like those old dance scenes, like with the tapping and just the way like they move their bodies like they were liquid. It's just amazing.
But it's like the 80s like, you know, the male possessive gaze. It's like the 80s possessive gaze of the 40s. Right? Like it has to be sure that you realize you're looking at the 40s through the idea that the 80s owns its ass and can shank it at any point it wants to.
Oh my God.
I watched too much Oz. Anyway, it's getting out of my system slowly.
I'm trying to imagine Gene Kelly in Oz. What role would he? I think he'd play. Like, what was that?
He'd be the old Greek guy.
Totally.
Okay, so he'd be a what do you call it? The people inside. He'd be a prisoner. He'd be an inmate.
He'd be the guy that like tries to dig his way out a lot. No, he wouldn't be an administrator. The administrators are like way too. They're not like
the administrators.
Old and genial.
Yeah, they're like hard asses. They're honestly just as bad as the prisoners. He would be like the guy who like robbed a place and tries to get married inside jail.
He's a warden at the other prison where things are actually like decent, and they focus on actually anti-recidivism programs and things like that.
Yeah, he's the head of the Battlestar Galactica if the Oswald Penitentiary is the Battlestar Pegasus. If you got it, you got it. If you didn't get it, it's a lot of work for that line.
And we've talked about Battlestar Galactica before, so
it's true.
I need pizza in order to process that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in awe of this thing as an object, though, because it's so...
What do you mean an object?
Right, it feels more like an object than a film, almost.
Yeah, this doesn't feel like a movie.
Right, it feels like I went to an amusement park for 2 hours or something.
Is it a media or a medium?
Elizabeth just yelled, "Is this a media or a medium?" We were having this conversation earlier. So actually, I saw Dan and Elizabeth in person. I had to deliver something, touchless delivery. So I drove down. Dan and I exchanged it on the porch, like not touching the same thing. It was sort of double bagged. And then he went back up, and I stood downstairs next to my car, and they were upstairs on the second floor on their porch, and we had a conversation for about an hour.
Yeah.
So we did actually have an in-person interaction.
Yeah.
Just, 30 feet and 2 stories apart.
Yeah, and I've been growing my hair out, so...
Yeah, Dan has a beard. Is it Trotsky? No, who's...
Rapunzel.
No, Marx. Oh, okay. Rapunzel if she were playing the role of Karl Marx. Or or is it Karl Marx if you were playing Rapunzel?
Well, he's letting down his hair to the proletariat so that they might climb up.
Okay.
In a lonely tower or something.
All right, so it's Karl Marx in the role of Rapunzel.
Yeah, so... Wait, I just had another thought. So, like, Citizen Kane, right? Because Citizen Kane is the impetus for this whole movie. Okay. That's the first place you see Xanadu used in the sense that the film is thinking about it.
Yeah.
There's like at least 5 or 10 shots that are just these pastiche recreations of the one scene where the camera zooms out. Kane is in Xanadu, and I think you see it once with Kane actually in Xanadu, and then there's another shot of it towards the end when the reporters are wandering around. He's died and they're taking all the stuff out, and they reuse that shot a whole bunch of times. Kane came out in 1941, so Citizen Kane is kind of like the last Great Depression era movie, I would say.
Okay.
You have all that like kind of suspicion and distrust of the noir period. I mean, not that the noir period doesn't really end then, but the kind of Depression era movies most of them before that, like there's a sense like, oh, greed is bad, but there was also a lot of fantasies about just being rich and having better problems than most people had at that point. Like every Fred Astaire movie, every
except for Rules of the Game, right? Because that came out in 37. Was that just like ahead of its
that was
time?
39, I think, right? And I mean, Rules of the Game was like, hey, everybody hated it when it came out.
I'm just saying that's my point. Is like it was I don't know.
No. I mean, it's kind of.
Wait, what does this have to do with Rules of the Game?
I mean, I guess which one's the end of the Depression? Like in movie.
I guess my point was that it was a movie critiquing like the greed and opulence of and like just inherent depravity of the ruling class, but perhaps before a period where films like were really actively doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think Rules of the Game definitely, I think it has a much bleaker portrait of the rich than Citizen Kane does. Like, Wells doesn't like to get gory ever, he kind of implies a lot of stuff. There's a lot of like grand symbolic scenes, but you don't see like, when Kane starts the Spanish-American War, basically, we're not seeing the soldiers on the ground or something. We're just meant to understand this in grand operatic terms that the wealth did not complete him and he is essentially broken.
Well, I think that like also Citizen Kane, like as much as it's making like a critical commentary on society, is also very much about like the psychology of one man. Like we're supposed to sort of go on this deep like and long-term sort of journey of trying to understand like who he is as a person. Whereas like Rules of a Game is more of just kind of like a portrait of a society. Like you don't really go in deep with any one particular character, I feel like, with that movie as much, but I don't know.
I mean, I think it's also interesting the two Xanadus, like the Wells Xanadu is a thing trying to replace a trauma from early childhood, pre-sexual maturity. Whereas the Xanadu in this film is very much just a fixation on like a person's 20s or like their sort of physical peak.
I mean, I think it's definitely that. I think it's also a fixation on the point in time at which like someone was at a fork in the road and like chose the wrong thing.
That's true, yeah.
Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one. Wait, no. How did it? No. I'm sorry. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the wrong one.
Wow, beautiful. That's going to become like a famous poem.
Thank you.
I took the wrong turn at Albuquerque.
So Xanadu. Let's see. So this is one of those, I'm in not a great mood. What do I want to, how do I take care of that? Oh, I knew. And one of the things is get on YouTube, do a search for Xanadu, and watch the 6 minute roller disco dance sequence.
Aww. It's so true though. I was laughing throughout the movie and it wasn't even because anything was funny. It was just like so joyful.
Yeah. I mean, this is not a good movie.
No, that's also true. I was laughing because it was not a good movie.
Yeah.
But also bad movies bring joy sometimes.
Yeah. This is definitely a so bad it's good kind of movie.
Oh yeah.
This is like a movie, this is like one of those movies that's defined by sets and lighting.
Yeah.
It's weird because the tone is completely different, but throughout it, I couldn't stop thinking about like Michael Mann, Manhunter, like first Hannibal Lecter movie where everything looks like it was shot under this fucking green neon light. You ever see that one?
No, although I remember seeing trailers for it on TV.
It's good, but it's like the most surreal episode of Miami Vice ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not much to say about. I think everything's been said about it. I mean, it's a fun movie.
We dug even deeper than we expected we would.
Well, we didn't go into. Last week we watched the Super Mario Brothers live action movie from 1993. We made a lot of comments to the effect that was the end of the 1990s,
right?
And like cinematically, even though the 90s had quote unquote begun, because you have the 91 Sundance movies, Reservoir Dogs, Dogs and Clerks, and well, no, Clerks hadn't come out.
Which is 94.
Yeah, Clerks was 94, but you had like you had things that could be considered like kind of quintessential 90s movies. Reality Bites had come out, which Reality Bites to me is like the Xanadu of the 90s.
See that.
It's so bad.
Yeah, let me know when you'll, if and when you all decide to watch it, let me know, because I do want to watch it again, because I hated it at the time. I've hated it all these years. I want to see if I hate it. And the reason I hate it,
yes,
the what's his name? I want to call him River Phoenix, not River Phoenix.
No, River Phoenix was dead by then, I think.
Yeah, what's the name of the guy? The guy who's been in other
Ethan Hawke.
Better. Ethan Hawke, thank you. Ethan Hawke is such a jerk. He is so obnoxious. He's borderline abusive, and he is the one who quote unquote wins.
Oh, like his character?
Yeah, the character.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about real Ethan Hawke. I was like, Ethan Hawke in real life
no.
is really sweet. My friend like has a podcast about Ethan Hawke. But like
it's a movie romanticizing downward mobility. Like that's the thing. My friend Stan pointed it out to me, that everything that was quote unquote slacker culture in the early 90s was just a way to romanticize the fact that people weren't going to ever reach that economic peak of the 1950s that they're romanticizing in Xanadu ever again.
Right.
Like, ever since he mentioned that, I see it everywhere in those movies.
Right. Yeah. You were gonna make some kind of point about like what did like the 80s begin and end with Xanadu? Was that kind of what you were working?
Well, the 80s kind of begin with Xanadu, and then they end with Super Mario Brothers the movie, which takes like all the garishness and nonsensicality of a Xanadu, mixes it with like the nonsensical dystopia, neon dystopian other side of the Xanadu aesthetic that you see in some like Blade Runner or Max Headroom or any of that stuff, and then just kind of puts it into a live action Super Mario Brothers movie, thereby killing it as a viable thing. It's like you're seeing like the dinosaur of the 80s slowly struggling in the tar pit.
Right.
Well, would you say that the Super Mario Brothers movie is the end of the 80s or more of the beginning of the 90s? What is it more?
I think it's the end, because like I would say the 90s began before, like cinematically before Super Mario Brothers, but they're not dead.
Like what?
Super Mario Brothers?
No, like the 90s. Oh, you were just describing the 90s movies. Yeah, okay. So
yeah, like Slacker. I mean,
and I took it as far back as Heathers.
Yeah, Heathers is definitely a 90s movie, even if it's in the 80s. That's like such a 90s movie.
Oh my god, such a good movie.
Yeah, that's I guess we sort of did that for the podcast. It was an Anno Mini. We haven't done an Anno Mini in a while.
Yeah.
Anno Mini. Wait,
I was talking about how if you want to understand Generation X, you've got to watch Slacker, watch Slacker, Clerks, and Heathers. That's all you need to do to understand them.
What about Millennials?
Arrested Development, the first 3 seasons.
No, that's not a movie though. I don't know, really.
I feel like TV was way more important to millennials than movies ever were.
Okay, that's a good point.
I feel like there'd probably be a movie in there somewhere, but like it would mostly be TV.
But you could probably come up with TV shows that do the same thing for the.
Oh yeah. I mean, Arrested Development. Let me look at the.
No, for Gen X is what.
For Gen X.
Yeah, what were
what
had to choose like 3 movies for millennials?
I can't even remember what movies came out. Like
The Dark Knight.
Oh my god, that's such. I mean, yeah, that does kind of define like the post-Iraq war thing, because we're not talking about good movies. We're talking about like movies that you can say like, oh, this is how people
The Social Network.
Right, the Social Network, like it thinks it's criticizing the tech industry, and then the tech industry like is like, you don't even know the half of it, and then starts like spying on everybody while they're like taking a shit.
Basically.
Social Network. So these are the defining movies.
I'm just throwing random.
Well, the whole Aaron Sorkin, like, oh, respectability still exists so long as like the Aaron Sorkin cargo cult, like the Social Network is sort of the defining moment and end point of that.
What about Harry Potter? I know you're going to disagree, but I feel like Harry Potter was so defining for our generation. I mean, just like...
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people saw it.
Right. It's just like everyone was obsessed with it for so long, and some people still are. Even though we all realize that J.K. Rowling is just like an asshole.
Yeah, we thought she was cool.
We thought she was cool.
Cool, but,
She was
I mean,
not cool.
Granted, there's an issue in which she's not very cool. So she's not. Turns out she's not perfect. But the issue in which she's not cool on, yeah, J.K. That's not very. That's not very cool. So yeah, it turns out that she's not very cool.
Right.
But then it turns out that like Johnny Depp brought a lot of like convoluted, very complicated like soap opera drama to this pandemic, and I am very thankful for it because I need like stupid news.
Oh wait, what did I miss? What did I miss?
Oh, so it turns out that Amber Heard is like being sued for falsifying statements. This audio came out of their therapy session, and it turns out she was like throwing like heavy shit at him constantly, and like he was basically like running out of the house because she was beating the crap out of him.
Oh, wow.
And she's like talking about it openly in this recording of like part of a therapy session.
It is terrifying that a therapy session can go public like that.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
That's like not okay.
Well, I think she'd recorded it because it was found in discovery through her lawyers, I'm pretty sure.
That's really weird.
It's like soap opera-ish, and it like doesn't involve the like federal government trying to steal medical supplies to kill us all to bring the stock market back. So I'm all for any of it.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe him anymore.
Does this mean that he's no longer a Me Too bad guy?
Part of me like really hopes so.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he might get out of this because like she hired a private investigator to track him, and the guy came out and was just like, yeah, it sounds like he's a cool dude with a drug problem,
Yeah.
But no, Woody Allen's autobiography came out, and that thing's getting like awful reviews. Everybody's like, we knew he was creepy, and now he's like creepy with a different publisher. Like it was, but those were fun to read too because they didn't involve the federal government stealing medical supplies to kill all of us to bring back the stock market. So
I'm sorry.
My bar is low.
I'm sorry, not laughing at that part. That's sad and disturbing and upsetting, and I'm waiting for it's like if all those half-hearted secessionist movements are going to be full-hearted now after all this is done.
Yeah.
I mean, if the governors are pushed to it.
Yeah, I think it's more at this point. I'm starting to envision what will the current United States look like after the secessions have happened.
It's going to be like
New England, like a gerrymander map.
Yeah.
New England, New York, Pennsylvania, the South, the Midwest, California, and Washington.
It's going to be the first time you ever have like one country that literally is like a donut hole inside of another country.
Wait, so the main country.
It's going to be all the coastal states. So you're just going to have this country within a kind of like Russian nesting doll country.
Yeah. Okay.
It'll be the only time in history, I think, that you'll have one country that's completely surrounded at all of its borders by another country.
You think so?
Well, South Africa tried to do that with like Botswana, right? No, or Swaziland.
Maybe.
They had
there is a little tiny country in the middle. Lesotho.
Yeah. What was that?
Isn't it Lesotho?
Lesotho? Well, because they had the Bantustans, but was it Lesotho that was surrounded by it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I should hope that I would know because I lived in South Africa for 3.5 months, but like
no.
I don't know. I'm not very good at geography.
And yes, we just basically compared the United States to South Africa, and I'm thinking apartheid regime South Africa, so complete with the Bantustans. Anyway,
South Africa is a pretty big country.
What is
South Africa?
South Africa is a pretty big country.
Pretty big, not as big, but still pretty big.
Yeah, big enough to have a tiny little country embedded within it.
Yeah.
So
it's
a big donut with a tiny little donut hole. But it's still that. So our donut isn't good.
It's like this big, and then it's this big, and there's a little hole at the.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a donut with a big hole in the middle.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like
you're going to have
pretty conservative.
You have the United States of America on the coasts, and then you're going to have like, God's urethra in the middle.
Oh.
You're going to see like the country's going to be split open like a watermelon at a Gallagher show.
Wow. Yeah, what were we talking about again?
Well, that's if all 50 states separate.
Right, like some fatty in the refrigerator.
Like some what?
Like,
Ew, 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 ew.
Like the coconut milk I realized went bad this morning.
Ew. Oh.
Sorry, everyone. I was really bummed, because I was going to use it for another, carrot soup. Oh.
I'm sorry.
I tried my best, it's hard to drink coconut milk quickly.
Uh-huh.
I think it just wasn't stored properly as part of it, but next time. Oh, God.
So, Xanadu.
Have you ever imagined a coconut lactating?
I don't want to. And so, no, I never have.
Entendre.
No, just because it's milk.
I mean, that's kind of what happens when you split open a coconut.
One big lactation?
I don't know. I mean...
So does that mean that, at a Gallagher concert, the watermelon is lactating?
Have you ever had a fresh coconut?
I had one with you.
Not that way.
That's right. We had one. Yeah. Isn't it so good?
It was good.
That was fun. We were in a huge crowd.
We were in a huge crowd, and then we separated from it and made a smaller group. But yeah, at one point we were in huge crowd, and it was there was so much energy, and people were bumping up against each other, and it was wonderful. And I'm saying this as the biggest introvert, that I loved being in a crowd with people touching. Which just
are you really an introvert? I still find that hard to believe.
I know. But no, I can show you. I have proof when I take those tests, the Briggs-Myers tests and others like that.
Really?
I'm introvert almost 100%.
Well, wait, what are your initials?
The S and the N. Wait, yeah, the S and the N are right on the border, so it's almost 50-50. So I'm either an ISFP or INFP.
Oh, I'm an ENFP.
ENF, so INF. So we're the extrovert versus introvert version of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Which what?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, totally. Wait, Dan, what are you?
Well, I took mine on a site with a lot of pop-ups. So the screen kept writing, it puts the lotion on its skin or it gets the hose again. And then it asked me for my credit card number for a security tool.
You're definitely an I.
I'm an I.
Oh yeah.
I'm an I like you're a U.
What's the N versus S again? It's like
N is intuitive, S is sensing, something like that.
So you're an IS. T.
I'm an is.
Right, isn't it?
T 100%.
100%.
Yeah.
What's a T?
90% T.
Feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And then what's the last one?
And Dan, just to be clear, that doesn't mean that you don't feel. It's just the way you approach things.
Right.
I feel by thinking.
The way that you respond to things in your life. Yeah. And then the last one's perceiving versus
judgment.
Oh, definitely J. So you're an ISTJ.
Yes, J.
Yeah.
What is it again?
An introvert,
sensory,
sensing, thinking, judging.
And again, that doesn't mean that you're a judgmental person.
I mean, I am.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I can be judgmental too, but it's more like it's judging versus perceiving, which is totally you are 100% judging, especially since you're on the spectrum. Wait, you can cut that part out.
Oh, I mean, I've talked about it on the show before.
Oh, okay, don't cut that.
Oh yeah.
I just don't want to violate your privacy.
Oh, well, that was nice.
Yeah, I'm not. I'll have to read what that is.
Oh, it's a great test. I mean,
no. I know what the Myers-Briggs test is. I'll have to read what I don't know. It always just seemed like the
astrology.
Yeah, it seemed a little bit astrology-ish.
It's actually really, I mean, that's so that career test that I took, half of that was a really in-depth Myers-Briggs test. It's spot on.
The only test I ever trusted was the love tester.
No, the one
I put a quarter into it and I gripped it and it said I was Rudolph Valentino and I stopped shaving my face.
With tiny eyebrows? He had tiny eyebrows.
But were they naturally tiny or did he sculpt them?
They were definitely sculpted because I feel like that was the big look in the 20s.
Okay, yeah. So it was white cake makeup.
Oh my god.
And women, but especially for men.
But all of his sex
lips.
appeal though was in his incredibly strong grip, or else that entire gas station test was a lie.
Excuse me. I just did one of those. I just did one of those a little while ago. I was in San Francisco for work, and they've got a Pier 39 there. Pier 39 Fisherman's Wharf. They've got one place there, the huge place with lots of old timey arcade games, and also with the, what do you call the movies where you watch
Nickelodeons.
And Nickelodeons. So they had a love test. It was a different name. I forget. Oh, I know. It was Uncle Fester. It was Uncle Fester.
Oh yeah, the Uncle Fester machine. Yeah.
So first I did it on light, and I was like, I can barely feel this. I put it on the strongest, so I could really feel the shock. So it was invigorating.
It sounds sexual.
There was something.
Yeah.
Maybe if it was a little stronger. It wasn't quite at that level. It needed a little more. Like,
I mean, you like put something in a hole and then it judges your ability to love. Like, what's more sexual than that?
But you put something I was going to say something very small in a very small hole. But I guess relative, the two are actually very, very well matched.
Yeah, it's got like a little trigger even.
Like a pea and an earlobe.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Like a what?
Never mind.
She said a pea and an earlobe. That's some Rule 34 that Elizabeth is bringing fresh to the internet.
And on that note.
Wow. Pea earlobe slash? Is this
like God, now it's violent?
What was that? Yeah, so what else? What else is there to say about Gene Kelly's final performance? Other than a few episodes of The Love Boat, but last film performance.
Well, I mean, after this, they shipped him off to the roller skate disco, and then they made him into glue.
Well,
what they do with old movie stars is they repurpose them as Elmer's glue.
Wait, that is so sick. Why would you say that?
Because it was a joke on BoJack.
Oh.
St. Elmer's Hospital.
Oh my God.
But you're pointing out some tributes to him in the movie.
Oh yeah. Well, there's I mean, the main caster members, Sonny and Olivia Newton-John, aka Kira, I think.
Kira.
It's like weird. I'm really good with actors' names, but I'm really bad with character names in movies.
Like I was referring to Ethan Hawke being a jerk in Reality Bites.
Right. And God, yeah, they start singing in the rain. And I mean, you also
the
have
rain
like
was like only happening immediately in front of the camera, so nothing actually got wet, including the tops of their umbrellas.
Well, this
is
a movie about the Anthropocene.
A what? Oh.
So like the Anthropocene, for those of you listening who aren't up on your like SAT words. Maybe you took the SAT a long time ago. They never stop coming, and I'm going to keep using them when I feel like it because I don't care about your feelings. No, but
that's what she said.
That's what she said, yeah.
For the last long sentence.
Yeah, no, that's a very long convoluted. Anyway, so the Anthropocene is the period in history when man effectively dictates man's own environment.
And our listeners will know this if they listened to the last episode.
Yep, and this is very much a movie about that because anything like the only time that we see an actual outdoors is Miami, which is one of the most like Miami is purposely used in movies a lot of times in order to evoke man's control over supposed nature. You have perfectly even palm trees. Every wall is perfectly manicured. It's nature as a kind of symbolic aesthetic tribute to man's dominance over it.
Interesting that you say Miami because technically the movie was supposed to be set in LA, but there were several points in that movie.
The outdoor shots are clearly
totally Miami because I was like, I recognize that, like the curve of the shoreline, like the curve of the sidewalks and everything. Totally Miami. Miami
was like the defining locale of 80s US like movie aesthetics, right? You got like Miami Vice. It's got all the like it's the place where the cocaine comes in. It's the place where you see like the most neon in the movies. You see neon on a palm tree is so evocative of the 80s that when they came out with the kind of 80s themed Grand Theft Auto game, I remember like the posters, some of the posters were literally just like basically a palm tree with neon with the logo or there was like a like Miami Vice parody cartoon a couple years ago where, you know, everything's just purple neon light saturating palm trees.
Isn't it a little late for a Miami Vice parody?
I mean, isn't
Like-
it a little bit late for like a Full House reboot show?
No, but there's a difference. One is saying we're continuing the story or we're redoing the story. One is saying we're going to make fun of this story.
Well, they came out with the Hawaii Five-O remake before that, even.
No, but that's a remake, not a parody.
Oh yeah, no, but it failed. It was on shit, I forget what station it was on because all the adult animation on pretty much all the stations looks like Adult Swim stuff except for Netflix. Shit, what was it? It was like 2-3 years ago. Rob Lowe played the lead voice. But basically, yeah, you put purple neon and palm trees, and you can evoke like a specific feeling of the 80s very easily.
Okay.
And that's become kind of a cultural shorthand. And I think Xanadu, like the amount that it predicted what cultural shorthand had staying power is kind of mind-boggling.
So this movie is actually ahead of its time. Or
Well,
it's
so
at the
of its
Vanguard.
time.
It's at the Vanguard.
Right?
What was that?
It's
No,
like
not
of its
at the
time.
Vanguard. It's
It's what Hegel would call the Geist.
the Geist. It's not the Zeitgeist. It's just the Geist.
Well, the Zeitgeist. Yeah, I guess the Zeitgeist is the spirit, because Geist is just German for spirit.
Okay.
And so the Zeitgeist would be the spirit of the now, and phenomenology of the spirit, which in German, I forget the exact wording, but Geist is the word that he's using for spirit.
Okay.
He's talking about the spirits of things, right? This sort of like nebulous metaphysics that you can't quite get to. And I think that's oh man, I am so stoned. I ate some pizza.
I think the word I was looking for was prescient. Prescient? How do you pronounce it?
Yeah. I always call it prescient, but I don't actually know if that's correct.
So this movie was prescient of the 80s.
Yeah, well, it feels so much like if you try to come up with a clip show of what were the most abstracted signifiers of something being 80s you could think of in like 1991, it would look like Xanadu, but it came out in 1980.
Yeah. I mean, so really, we could have had the 80s end in 1980 because we got it all right there.
Right.
All of it.
We could have moved to onto the 90s 10 years earlier.
Wow, missed opportunity.
And it's self-aware. That's like what's so bizarre, I think, about it, because like the movies that define the 90s, except for Reality Bites, I don't feel were really self-consciously trying to be like, this is what the 90s look like versus the 80s, you know?
Whereas this is saying this is what the 80s are going to look like. Is that the?
Yeah. He says literally, this is the 80s, and the 80s are just sort of like take everything from the past that you can, so long as you can make it like glitzy, and it becomes this sort of like showpiece to kind of like glossy commercialism in the sense of complete control over interior spaces. That's why like all the sets look so minimal. That's why like everything is abstracted down to the like to the literal point that she's just this like floating figure standing on like a couple lines that look like a grill. You know, you could show them on top of an actual building with a skyline that's just stylized, but you want them roller skating in front of this giant lit up picture of a skyline. And we don't even think about that, right? Like when you watch The Room, you're always thinking like, why did he green screen in the top of a building when he could have just gone up to the top of a building to shoot all this stuff? The Tommy Wiseau movie. And in this movie, they kind of do the same thing, but we know exactly why they didn't just go to the top of the building, because that's the point, is that you can recreate the worlds in a small space where you have complete control.
It's like the ultimate hyper real space.
Ooh.
Right, like that's what shopping malls mean. That's why casinos all look so 80s, even when they're not built in the 80s.
The first Umberto Eco book I read is called Travels in Hyperreality, which is, I can't remember if it's a collection of essays or a whole book. No, it's a book. It's a whole one long essay. But the reason I got to it, and actually I had seen the movie The Name of the Rose. I hadn't read the book, but I'd seen it. I didn't know any connection between the two because I read it as Umberto Eco's Travels in Hyperreality, as a science fiction book I hadn't heard of. So I didn't realize that hyperreality didn't have anything to do with hyperspace.
Yeah.
Can you explain what hyperreality is? Because I would not do it justice, and I don't want people to come away from this thinking that it's hyperspace.
Oh man, hyperreality is really hard to explain. Dan, if I fail to do this, then you have to come in and rescue me.
It's when you're in the spaceship and you go faster than the speed of light. And everybody like grabs onto the control deck and the camera starts shaking.
No, that's
literally hyper reality.
It's kind of the idea that, particularly in the context of like late capitalism, like objects can be like duplicated to the point that the duplications themselves replace reality, and you no longer have any need for actual reality. So like the set of the city skyline is more real than the actual city skyline. And I mean, like an example of that is like paper money. Like money itself is no longer tied to any sort of like concrete like meaning or like any kind of concrete object of value.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need to be, because the money is more real than the environment that we live in itself.
The 1940s are clothing and dancing and no war.
Right.
Oh, in this movie.
Well, no, like hyper reality. It's the replacement of reality with these like signifiers that simultaneously they evoke things, but they don't mean things.
No, but the example you just used, the 1940s dancing without war, I'm just saying, you're talking about from what was in this movie.
Yeah, and Xanadu, like Xanadu is a very postmodern movie in the sense that in very hyper-realistic, or well, not hyper-realistic, but hyper-reality focused movie, in the sense that it's taking all these, the most abstract way you could possibly signify the 1940s, 1950s, and 1980s, and it's attempting to boil it down to that essence. You know, anything that's not driving towards that is usually cut out, even though like it's weird. It's such a like bombastic maximal movie, but in this weird way it's like incredibly minimalistically focused and like kind of obsessive about just sort of just getting these
I mean, a perfect contemporary example is the fact that like during this weird period of time, our reality has literally become just like fully the internet. Like memes and like trends on social media are more real to us as a culture than like any kind of thing that could be happening in physical reality, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, like
I was going to say the example from the book that, working well with concrete examples. The two examples that I remember are, the first one was, speaking of Xanadu, which was Kane's castle that he built, William Randolph Hearst, on whom Kane is based. What was the name of his castle?
Oh, I forget. Yeah. But I mean, it's based on an actual thing. And it's also the actual word Xanadu is coming from the Samuel Taylor Coleridge poem that they recite part of.
Right. Yeah. This isn't, sorry, I'm confusing things. The Xanadu in this movie does not refer to Citizen. Well, actually, you were showing how it does refer to Citizen Kane.
Yeah, there's like
I'm confusing things. The point wasn't Xanadu. The point was about hyperreality, which is the one example was William Randolph Hearst going throughout Europe and collecting all these all sorts of art, and then putting them in one place that's supposed to look like it's some sort of fancy European place, but it isn't actually. It just
looks like a warehouse.
But it looks like a warehouse, but sort of. But all this, it sort of looks like a warehouse. But the other example,
all these like items taken away from their context or natural habitat.
Well, let's put them all and make them one super place. But the other one was Disney World. He gave Disney World as the pinnacle.
Oh,
Disney World is like the ultimate hyper-realized.
There's a tiny part of Disneyland that's supposed to be a recreation of the town I grew up in.
Seriously?
Yes.
Saratoga.
There's a Saratoga section of, I believe it's Disney World. It's not Disneyland. I could be wrong. I haven't looked this up in a long time. But
is this an Epcot?
No, I don't think it's an Epcot. It's like one of the.
No,
I'll have to look it up. I can't remember, but like I took like the Google Earth tour of it, and I like looked at photographs, and it's so weird. You know, it's like it's got to be like somebody who lives in mainland China walking into a PF Chang's or something. Like,
oh my god. Or what's that place on Route 1? Kowloon.
Oh,
yeah, well, Kowloon is like actually owned by Chinese people though. Like a PF Chang, like.
Yeah.
Like let's
But
say
it
I
still doesn't
live
make it any
in
less
I live in
weird.
Mexico City, and then I go to a Taco Bell. That's what it's got to look like.
Nice.
Like,
I don't know. Kowloon is pretty weird. The
I
interior
mean, Kowloon
of that
is
place.
weird, but it's not like
That's
it's
true.
not somebody else's like miniaturized version of your country or something, or like the place, like a physical space you're very familiar with.
That's true. Wait, so okay, the pressing question that I think we still haven't really addressed, or maybe we have, but I was eating pizza. What is Xanadu?
It's a roller disco in this place.
No, but like, what is Xanadu?
It's when you bring together 1940s
yes,
post-war innocence and repression with the excesses of 70s disco culture, and just kind of like cover it all up with a suntan.
I think it's something unattainable.
Right. I mean, the sort of spirit of the thing, it's this idea that we can live in this place of sort of nostalgic, rejoicing for an eternity.
It's saying here is the future, but by obsessively looking at the past, right? It's like toxic nostalgia. It's a crest of a wave. The thing.
Yeah. The place may be called Xanadu, but the Xanadu-ness of it only lasts that one night. Only lasts for a few hours while Kira is dancing and singing.
Right.
She's gone. It's gone. It's just a place called Xanadu.
No.
I don't know. Does that go along with what you were saying?
Maybe
yeah. I mean,
Xanadu.
in the Gene Kelly character, he's just he has that conversation like, shit, who is he talking to? He has some kind of conversation where he's clearly talking about like, oh, the building is old and damaged, but that just means it's a proven hit, and I'll never die because I'm Gene Kelly. And
a few years later.
Yeah, a few years later we saw how, although, I mean, he was dancing pretty well for somebody who was practically on his deathbed.
He was still one of the best dancers.
He didn't look like he was about to die. That's really depressing.
Oh, yeah, okay, now let's see when, I've got to look up and see when he actually did die. Because it could be that he lived for another 20 years. I don't know, do you know when Gene Kelly died?
No, I mean, Gene Kelly, I was always more of a Fred Astaire guy, so I never dove too deep into the Gene Kelly catalog.
He died in 96. He was alive for another 16 years.
Oh.
Okay.
Like I said, he did a few episodes of The Love Boat. I'm not sure what else, but this was his last film.
So he was just like hanging out with all his stuff in the boxes for the next 16 years, like.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like,
no, I don't know what else he was
flirting with his record player. Oh yeah. He like literally like looks like he's gonna like have sex with his record player at some point, and like when the artist guy goes into the office of like the big executive dude, the one like the big fuck you status object that he has is this like bright shiny silver turntable and like just the brightest shiniest silver high-end stereo components you can think of in 1980.
Yeah.
And
I noticed that.
That's popular.
And meanwhile Gene Kelly's like in this giant gorgeous mansion just sitting by himself, like imagining his younger self in like weirdly sexual terms. And he literally keeps the giant room, he says, because, well, nobody comes in here in a long time, but sure makes my record sound good. The worst Gene Kelly impression ever, I know.
Sounded almost like your
James
Boston
Cagney,
accent. Oh, you want to hear Dan do a Boston accent?
Oh yeah, I can release it here.
Yeah.
So I submitted this to a Boston accent contest, and I was like pre-rejected, but anyway.
I'm sorry, it was me. I pre-rejected it because it said a vulgar word that I didn't want to post on my Instagram.
Hi everyone, I am from Boston. I am the spirit of Boston. I would like to introduce you to my penis. I have named him Ted because he is a slugger. I like donuts, and I like my other pastries in bar form. I do not like ahs. I will not say ah.
Literally the worst.
Have you gotten a response yet?
I am not Mayor Quimby. I am just the man who looks like Mayor Quimby who gets shot if things go awry.
It kind of sounds
It's
like
right. Like I'm kind of imagining. I'm like, Saddam Hussein had like 34 Saddam Hussein lookalikes all hanging out on a boat in that one photo.
it sounds like Orson Welles had sex with Willem Dafoe when he had that like pirate accent in The Lighthouse.
I don't think that Ben Affleck has a real Boston accent because I have a real Boston accent.
That's like not even an accent. Oh,
I was
my
not
God.
assassinated in 1963, but
Well,
I did make it with that broad.
It does have like some of the Mayor Quimbiness of it, but I think that's more. I think that's the nasalness of it. It's more the nasalness of it than it is the accent.
Oh God.
So your Mayor Quimby accent, your Mayor Quimby voice is almost spot on, except for getting the accent.
Yeah.
I
No,
will not
seriously,
respond to
no.
these gross misjudgments of my public character.
This gross maligning of my public character.
Oh my God. Oh God. Stuck with a couple of nut jobs here.
Here.
A bay of pigs, is that a barbecue?
Wow.
Oh, too soon.
It's been like
Too
60
soon?
years. And
Too
also
soon.
it's Quimby is a Kennedy knockoff, and Kennedy.
Wait, what is that from The Simpsons?
Yes, it's the mayor
Okay.
of The Simpsons.
Yeah. So Xanadu. Any more
Yeah,
thoughts?
I do not think that Xanadu accurately reflected the spirit of Boston or its many patriots.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, this is Patriots Day.
Oh, it does 420.
What was it? And it is also 420.
So like
It is a dual
Boston,
holiday.
Boston's trying to piggyback on the weed train.
Well, there were no runners today.
No.
Oh wait, that too. Yeah, maybe not the weed so much. Maybe if those guys smoked more weed,
That was
they
more
would
of
have
like a
like.
Maine accent, actually. Maine is the hardest accent. I wish that I had a Maine accent, but I don't.
You're from Maine. No, I know. There's many Bostonians without a Boston accent.
Is it too soon? Is it too soon to say that if the Tsarnaev brothers had smoked more weed, maybe it would still be just our holiday, and like they would have used those slow cookers for like something very different?
Wait, what?
Well, I don't know. I feel
The
like
two brothers behind the Boston Marathon bombing.
right, and they use like a
Oh.
slow cooker to make the bombs, but I feel like if they'd been more stoned, they would have used it to make like tomatillo chicken, like I did.
And there goes a third of our audience.
Yeah, dude, too soon. Too soon.
Well, that's why I said, is it too soon at the beginning?
I mean, we still have millions to fall back on, so we're still cool.
Millions.
I mean, some of our advertisers might pull out, but I think we can handle it. I think we can weather this storm, especially if we get some of those small business loans that they're giving out.
Oh yeah, I heard there's still a lot of those.
All we have
left.
to do is take over a McDonald's franchise.
Right. Then we're no problem. Or what is it? Ruth Steakhouse or
Is that a place?
yeah. That's
Yeah, it's like a big chain in like the
Oh.
Midwest. Like the Midwest chains, they all suck, so they never make it here. Like Perkins. Perkins
Right.
is just like if somebody like cut Denny's nuts off.
The Midwest is a weird place, man.
I knew hey, don't knock it till you've lived there. I can knock it.
I drove through it. Does that count?
Yeah. But okay, so you treated the Midwest as drive-through states instead of flyover states.
Right.
I flew over it and then I exploited it for ratings on this very program you are now listening to.
Yeah, see, so I have a hard time with the whole thing
Such
about
a flyover show.
and getting and bashing the Midwest from both coasts. And it's similar to the way people, well, I say not quite similar to the way people talk about Florida, because they talk about Florida as if they're just like crazy morons, whereas they look at people in the Midwest as just being morons. So
As
so
New
there's-
York is to New Jersey, the rest of the country is to the Midwest.
Say that again. Yeah, stuff like that. And but like no. First of I can't even get into it. There's a whole.
I should point out that Ron is wearing a Michigan State T-shirt right now.
Yeah.
I just
No,
I'm
wearing
not
a
bashing on the
University of
Midwest.
Michigan shirt. What was that?
I'm not-
University of Michigan, excuse me.
I'm not bashing on the Midwest. I'm just saying that I saw a lot of weird shit when I was driving through the Midwest. It's just a weird place.
But people like somebody from Indiana coming over here would have a lot of the same things to say about Boston.
Oh yeah, sure.
People from Boston saying that about New York. Forget about Florida or.
Well, like what's weird about Boston?
Look at all these
The
old.
lack of Oz.
And listen to that accent. And they've got graveyards everywhere in the middle of the city.
The fact that they would elect Dan's bad false accent for mayor.
I missed that episode.
People of Springfield.
They've got a Holocaust memorial right next to this really fun place where you can buy pretzels from a stand.
Okay, that's pretty weird.
And that's just the city of Boston.
But I guess
are they at least fried pretzels? Because if they're not fried pretzels, then that's kind of disrespectful.
And they're always voting Democratic. They have the Democratic Party machine has complete control over the city and the state.
Sort of.
Except like most of the money coming in is through like military contracts. Yeah.
There's a Republican governor, but we've had a bunch of them. The Democratic Party machine doesn't care that much about the governor.
Well, they want a weak governor because if they have a strong governor, the governor takes too much power because there's no division. Whereas they have like the legislature has more power with a weak Republican governor that they can kind of, they kind of got him in like a weird place no matter what, because what Boston or Massachusetts conservatives want is usually pretty at odds with or not at odds, but like a very different kind of flavor than what the conservatives in the rest of the country tend to want. So if you're like the governor of Massachusetts, I feel like it would be really hard to get yourself into the national stage. It's not like New York, where New York is, if you're the governor of New York, you're basically getting yourself ready for a presidential run in some capacity, because you always look very strong because you have united houses generally within the New York legislature.
Right. You have to be a Massachusetts senator.
Yeah, that's Massachusetts senator. You have much better odds than like Massachusetts governor.
Yeah. We've had one of those as the presidential candidate, the Democratic presidential candidate, and he wore the army helmet backward. Is that what is he more known for? Wearing the army helmet backwards, or for being truly opposed to capital punishment?
Probably the hat.
Yeah, people don't remember his stance on capital punishment, but if they remember him at all, it's him wearing the helmet backwards.
Yeah, I feel like the current Republican Party, they could like change their slogan to democratize capital punishment.
Actually, no, that's what's weird about Massachusetts. If it's so goddamn liberal, why does it keep electing these Republican governors?
I think the punchline is that it's not actually liberal.
It's center left.
Or it's like liberal but not progressive.
Are you Democrats, or do you just hate ours that much?
Democrat. No, there's another Democrat. Yeah.
But yeah, no. To go back to the thing we were talking about with the Anthropocene and kind of man-made environments. Did you ever used to read any Howard the Duck comics?
Yeah, a little. Well, just no. Let me say that again. I read a few.
Okay.
And I saw the movie.
Oh yeah, we should watch that at some point. I watched that like 10 times when I was a kid because I had it on this VHS somebody recorded off TV.
Wow, that was like me with
so much.
That was like me with Brazil.
Brazil's like actually a good movie though.
Yeah.
The Howard the Duck movie just kind of like made me think that, I could still get with Leah Thompson even if I grew feathers and a beak.
So
Which, it's important.
Is that what you're going for with the beard?
Yeah, basically.
Trying to grow feathers?
Man feathers.
Man feathers. There we go. Ew, that sounds nasty.
No, so Howard the Duck, beginning of every issue, it says, trapped in a world he never made. and we're here, right?
Yeah.
And like in a house that presumably we had some say in decorating or, setting up. So we're like literally trapped in a world that we made.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So like not like Howard the Duck, because
But also, like, in a sense, though, like, we're also trapped in a world we never made.
like Howard the Duck.
Like Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
So-
You're experiencing hyperreality because you actually made this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Howard the Duck isn't experiencing hyperreality because he's actually from the duck dimension,
Right.
and ergo does not have culpability in the creation of 20th and 21st century human culture in the Anthropocene.
In the Anthropocene. I'm trying to wrap my head around that concept. So we are in the Anthropocene right now.
Trapped in a world he never / always ever made.
Say that again?
Trapped in a world he never / always made.
Wait, that's Howard the Duck, or that's you right now in your apartment?
That's me. That's all of us in our apartments.
That's all of us, right? That's all of us right
now. Like right at this exact. Trapped in a world he never made is specifically Howard the Duck, and probably trademark of Marvel comic books.
Living in a prison of his own design. That's us right now.
Right.
Yeah. So when we started the episode, I put the movie on mute, so it's been playing in the background this whole time. The movie is over.
You
Okay.
watched twice?
I watched twice. I was mostly watching the two of you, but it was in the background.
Wow, you have a tolerance that I can only hope to aspire to have.
Well, I was listening to you, so
That's
I only had the set designs. I didn't have to hear them talk, which was painful.
Hearing them talk.
What was it? It was painful to hear them talk throughout the movie.
Yeah. Oh God.
So this is almost like one of those director's commentaries, except we have no direct stake in this movie. But we talked over the whole thing and recorded it.
Oh, because it was actually playing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, yeah. Even though we talked through it, not over it.
That's true.
Because there was no voice. There was no sound. I wish, you know what? I was going to say, I wish I could have played it in such a way that you don't hear the dialogue, but you hear the singing. But there is such a thing. It's called soundtrack.
Oh, wait, so it'll actually just like mute the audio for any point when it's not music in a musical movie?
No. I mean, I need the CD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the music was actually really fun.
Yeah, the music was fun.
Well, yeah, it's like Electric Light Orchestra around when they released Out of the Blue, which is the one that has Mr. Blue Sunshine, City Woman, and a couple other, but Mr. Blue Sky. That's like their classic song.
Oh, okay.
Right.
The one album I know of theirs is the one with the what was it called?
It looks like a big like Simon game on like floating around in space.
No, I'm thinking the one with the ruby slippers. That's the one I know.
Oh, which one is that?
I've got the songs going through my head. Why can I not remember it? Let's see. I am typing right now ELO Ruby Slippers, and it completed it for me, and it is El Dorado.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was a earlier one, I think.
That's the only ELO album I know besides the soundtrack to Xanadu.
El Dorado, El Dorado. Sorry.
That's quite a.
He was one of the traveling mulberries.
It was also
or
a
Wilburys,
movie.
not mulberries. The traveling mulberries is like that's the farmers market.
Wait, who was
traveling Wilburys? Right, the thing with Jeff Lynne, Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan, and George Harrison.
Yeah, is one of them from ELO?
Jeff Lynne. Jeff Lynne is the
okay
ELO dude.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Yeah. So any final thoughts on the movie?
This podcast episode will never die. It will just keep on dancing.
Dancing.
Cool. All right. Oh yeah, what you didn't see was, I think, in asking the question, Elizabeth shook her head. So Dan spoke.
Yeah, I think
Elizabeth shook her head.
I think that's about it.
Yeah.
I think that's
Cool.
all I have to say about it for now.
All I have to say, I don't know what I was doing with that. I'm going with all you need is love to all you have to say about it. That they both have the word.
This is like taking like a heartwarming song and then just making it totally like
all you have to say, dum dum da da dum. All you have to say.
Say,
dum,
dun, dun, dun. All you have to say, say.
about it.
All you have to say. All you have to say.
I was never waiting for us, girl, as we walked along the walls.
Oh no 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 no! Oh no 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 no! You can't sing that without a microphone in your hand.
Yeah, that's like sacrilegious.
MacArthur Park is melting,
Melting
in the dark.
See, MacArthur Park is the United States.
Oh,
The sweet green icing flow.
The sweet green icing is all your life savings and those small business loans.
Someone left the cake out in the rain.
Donald Trump left the cake out in the rain.
And I don't think that I can take it, cause it took so long
to make it. And I'll never have that recipe again.
Goodbye.
Oh Jurassic Park is frightening in the dark. All the dinosaurs are running wild.
All right, wow, this episode has jumped the shark.
All right, so
So
until
on
next
that note,
week, this has
sorry,
been
go ahead.
Dan.
No, you go.
Oh, this has been Dan.
And this is Moran.
And this has been Elizabeth.
And this has been a nominee questionable movies. I did it. I pronounced it properly. All 3 words. Cool.
Trapped in a
All right.
podcast we always made.
The what?
Trapped in a podcast we always made.
All right. Okay, take care, everyone.
Later.